Welcome to the 35K Q&A. So in this edition, it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a rapid fire edition. I'm competing with YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok. And so this is going to be 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, I haven't decided yet, to answer every single question. It's going to be in chronological order, so I'm going to reply to all the questions in the community tab to let you know what number your question is. All right, question number one. By the way, me reading the question does not count for the answering time because that would be ridiculous. Question number one, what do you think is a good ratio to have between your deadlift and squat? Example, you should be able to squat 80% of your deadlift, 1 rep max. All right, time starts. This is actually pretty individual, and it's going to be fairly consistent during your lifting career. Okay, so if you're good at deadlifts when you start deadlifting compared to squats, you probably have leverages that are suitable for the deadlift, and therefore it's always going to be a little bit better. Number two, how to stop OMAD, 1 meal a day, adequately and enter a bulking phase. How much time to bulk for significant gains, and what is the proper rate of gains? Thank you. All right, so this one sort of has a few parts. I would say adding in 1 or 2 meals, but still doing intermittent fasting is the way to go. Don't go to like 8 meals a day. You're just not going to adapt well to it. How much time to bulk? As long as you can. A long, slow bulk is going to be best. And the rate of gains, I would say 1 pound to maybe 2 pounds per month. Question number 3, best way to bounce back after a break. Lost weight / size due to under eating and time off gym. Struggling to get motivated. Motivate me. No, motivate yourself, start slow, but be consistent. Don't do anything crazy the first week. Just get on a solid program and try to progress linearly. That's going to be the way to go. But the motivation has to come from you. Question number 4, I know recovery is important and most people advocate lots of rest days, but I like working out a lot and I work out 6 days per week. Progress has stolen though. Should I take a few days off and run a 3-day workout split? Love from India. I would say it's more about the total volume of work you are doing and just the amount of stress on the system rather than the days per week. But still, if you're going too hard, 6 days per week, perhaps cutting it back down to 5 or 4 is the right call. But I wouldn't say go right to 3 necessarily. 4 or 5, that middle of the road approach is probably best. Question number 5, how can a novice lifter judge RPE? Well, often they can't. They can focus on the bar speed and the effort and try to predict how many reps they have left, but usually they are pretty bad at it. However, it doesn't really matter because it's not necessary to actually count your RPE. Even as an advanced lifter, I don't actually write down my RPE, so it's probably just not needed. Question number 6, I'm going to give myself 30 seconds for this one. What a luxury because it's a little bit longer. What do you think of this new shift towards anti-compound, more biomechanically accurate isolation-based training as promoted by Paul Carter, Mark Carroll, Kassem Hansen, and the N1 guys? I'm familiar with Paul Carter, but not the other guys. Optimal for natties or just a gimmick? So I would say the best way to look at this is it's an addition to your training. Focusing on biomechanics is important. If you're doing a chest fly and you're standing, well, there's no tension on the chest, and that's a stupid thing to do. But I see it all the time on social media. So I would say, following the fibers or assessing the mechanics of a movement is a good thing, but it's certainly not everything. And if you look at Paul Carter, he built his physique mostly on compound movement. So I would say taking a mix of compound and isolation and not over-analyzing is the right way to go about things. Question number 7, a little bit of a longer one too. When determining whether an exercise works for you, what do you base this on? And how do you know if it is that particular exercise that is working, as no one really only does one exercise within a mesocycle? So how do you know it's not another exercise that is making a difference? So if you're a beginner, it's very difficult to tell because basically everything will work. As you become more advanced, you can actually try to sort through your training because you hit plateaus, because not everything works. So the more advanced you are, it's actually easier to tell what is working. I would say go by feel. Pump and soreness are one thing, maybe not the best, but they're certainly something. And then also, is it causing pain? Does it seem to contribute to growth? You should have measurements fairly regularly if you're serious about this. But a lot of it is more art than science. Question number 8, sort of a two-parter. High pulls versus upright rows for building up the yoke, strictly hypertrophy specific. Also, performing only the OHP and the upright row for long-term shoulder development. The first part, I would say both are good movements. High pulls tend to be a little bit easier on the shoulder for whatever reason. They also tend to, get more of a stretch, and you're going to be using heavier weights, so that's nice. But then upright rows, it's just more focused, more controlled. Try it out. Okay, it's going to be individual. Second part, only the OHP and the upright row. I would say no, not enough for full shoulder development, mostly because of the rear delts. Pressing hits the front delt really well. Upright row is pretty decent for the side delt, but for the rear delt, you want something a little bit more targeted, like a rear delt raise or skiers or, a cable movement, something like that. Question number 9, also to do with shoulders. If you had to pick one shoulder injury prevention exercise out of all, what would it be? I would say face pulls, although recently I've been doing them with dumbbells where you're lean forward and you're just, rotating up like this. Those seem to work really well. They target the shoulder and the rotator cuff a little bit differently. So I would say face pulls are a good start. They're really, really hard to fuck up. You can also do them in a variety of different angles and positions. So that is definitely a good staple. Number 10, are there any benefits for a pre/post-workout FAP? Yeah, you thought I was going to say protein shake. No, we're talking about shaking something else. I would say no, but if you do it before a workout, I think a lot of people, they feel like, their energy goes down. Post-workout might help you relax. I don't know. Try it and see. Question 11 sort of has 2 parts, but I should be able to answer both pretty quickly. Number 1, is it necessary to count calories? Number 2, if I don't have any soreness after a workout, does it mean that I didn't work enough and I won't grow any more muscle? Question 1, no, you don't have to count calories. They still count, but you don't have to count them. I don't. And question 2, no, soreness is not necessary, and it might mean that your workout is excessive, but it's not needed by any means. Question 12, if you had to only focus on one thing when it comes to working out, what would it be? I would say consistent progressive overload. If you're not trying to be better in some way every time you go to the gym, you're probably not going to get very far. You need to be driven, you need to be focused, you need to have goals, and you need to keep a training log about where you've been, and then have goals about where you want to be. Otherwise, this whole process doesn't work very well. Question number 13, I've heard that I should pull more than I push. Is this true? I'm currently monitoring my volume, sets per week. Okay, good. Should I make sure that I have more rowing, pulling, face pull sets than bench OHP? What about horizontal pulling versus vertical pulling ratio? Should I row more than I pull vertically? Okay, so there's a bunch of different questions in there. I would say generally speaking, pulling is easier to recover from than pushing. And it's not a bad idea to just do more. The back is very resilient and can just handle a lot of work. But it's also important to realize that if you're doing it for postural reasons, it's important to row in the right way. If you're just like this, instead of actually retracting, it's not going to do much for you in terms of injury prevention or risk management or anything like that. So I would say how you do it is just as important as how much you are doing. And as for the other ratios, it's going to be a little bit individual. And it's sort of hard to just comment on this kind of programming thing without knowing any other information about you. All right, next question. Underrated weight loss tip. Eat fewer calories. I know it's super simple, super basic, but that is what is needed for fat loss. And so everything else rotates and revolves around that goal. And so if you lose sight of that, you're fucked. So focus on that. I know it's commonplace, but it's still underrated. Our next question, is it okay to train with a protein intake below 1.6 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight? I don't know why you said 1.6 to 1.2. Did you mean 1.6 to 2.2? Because that's the sort of traditional sort of mainstream recommendation. Will you lose muscle with that protein intake while training? Also, is it even possible to build muscle optimally within that protein range? Okay, so that range is what is shown on average to optimize your muscle gain results. And so just because you're not there doesn't mean you're going to lose muscle. I would say as long as you're getting in, a gram per kilo, you're probably fine in terms of muscle loss. But that might not be enough to maximize your results. Number 16, thoughts on nucleus overload, easy for me to say, and training a muscle every day. I would say there's nothing really game-changing about it, and I don't think the benefits from specifically trying to target the satellite cells is going to be something that's really worth it. I would say as long as you're training reasonably intelligently, it's going to sort of sort itself out anyway. So I do think frequency is important, but you don't have to go crazy with things. All right, number 17, is sleeping 8 hours at a stretch same as sleeping 8 hours but at different times throughout the day? Same. You said same twice, buddy. Same. Is it enough? Yeah, I would say they're pretty close. I haven't seen any kind of huge differences in the literature. Basically, the total number of hours is going to be the most important thing. So if you have to get 6 hours plus a 2-hour nap, completely fine. Question 18, until what age do you see yourself lifting? I don't know. Until whatever age I die, I guess. All right, question 19. Try to summarize the entirety of getting yoked as fast and simple as possible. Get as strong as you can on the main lifts that contribute to hypertrophy with sufficient volume and recovery and sleep and protein, and choose the right parents. Question 20. How often should you expect to progress as a complete beginner? Can you just expect to do more each workout? I would say yes. If you're not progressing fairly consistently pretty much every workout, something is wrong with your program. Again, this is for beginners, for complete beginners. You're so sensitive to training and you're so far from your genetic natural muscular potential that you should be progressing very, very quickly. Question 21, opinion on weighted calisthenics. Will you ever incorporate more of it into your routine? And also, what do you think of me only doing weighted ring dips and heavy overhead presses? I don't like bench pressing. Do you think those two are enough for chest and shoulder gains? Stay strong, my friend. Opinion on weighted calisthenics. Yeah, they're fine. I'm focused on other stuff. You can't do everything at the same time, so you sort of have to prioritize. And I think dips and overhead presses are fine, but you're going to want rear delt and side delt stuff as well. All right, question 22. Can natural strict curl their body weight? I can do 50% for 10 reps, but can't do 100% for 1 rep. Never seen someone doing it in person yet. So a bodyweight strict curl is certainly possible, but it's very, very impressive, and you won't see it very often, natural or not. Plus 10% or 50% for 10 reps does not equate to 100% for 1 rep. I would say you have to be doing around 75% for 10 reps before you can expect to do bodyweight. Question 23, 3-hour gym sessions twice a week, is this too long? I would say measuring your time in the gym is not a good metric of anything. You do see some people spend a lot of time in the gym. They're not doing very much. Other people, their sessions are very quick, 30 minutes, 40, 45 minutes, and they get a lot of stuff done, and they can actually make very good progress. So I would say you're focusing on the wrong thing. Question 24, does adding straight up fat help with lifts? I've heard mass moves mass, but I don't understand how more belly fat increases a deadlift. So it does increase your ability to brace for sure, which is often the limiting factor for deadlifts. Squat, it helps give you, some cushion for the push-in and give you some, more rebound. Bench press, again, it shortens the range of motion, adds padding around the joints. And it's not that the fat is actually making movement happen, it's just that it makes things easier. Question 25, do you feel safe being a YouTuber in China even if the CC Pizzle is cracking down on policy? Yeah, I don't talk about politics really at all, and so, I don't really see any issues. I use a VPN, and then, yeah, all good. Question 26, I know this Q&A is building to a juicy precipice now, but could you spare a few seconds to beat the drum for your book? Oh, I like this question. Yes, you can get it on my website. It is $15 currently. And it's 200 pages. Reviews have been off the chain, and I am, I feel really good about it. It's very fairly priced, reasonably priced, not like $200 for an ebook or something stupid, and it's helping a lot of people. Number 27, Smith machine bench press instead of conventional bench press to ease into lifting for someone coming back from a surgery in their chest, yes or no? Yes, but more of a maybe because I don't actually know your current situation. Smith machine in general is fine. It's basically personal preference. Question number 28. Easy question. Maybe. What motivated you to start lifting? I actually don't know. I was a runner for a long time, and then I was just sort of tired about that and injured and then burnt out. And I was just like, it was September 1st, start of the school year. I was a teacher, and I was like, fuck it. I'm going to start lifting weights. And I did. Question number 29, how can you assess your training level, beginner, intermediate, advanced athlete? I would say, I have a chart in my book. If you have that, you can just look at it. But basically how long you've been training, how serious you've been training, and then how close you are to your potential. A lot of people train for a few years, but they're not actually intermediate, they're still beginners. So it does depend on a variety of factors, not just how strong you are. Question number 30, if you have 3 working sets, you increasing weight each set, or just do the same weight that will make you fail in your rep range? I would say the latter is going to be better, to where you have 3 quality efforts all within the same rough rep range and all within the same rough level of effort. If you're doing the first one, you're going up, you're probably going to be sandbagging some of the sets. Question 31, have you ever used any kind of performance enhancer till date? No. Okay, no PEDs, no steroids, no SARMs. I see some people and they're like, yeah, I'm roid free, but then they take a shitload of SARMs. You're still enhanced. No testosterone, nothing. Not even much in terms of supplements. So for me, I don't see myself going down that road, and I'm happy staying natural. Question number 32, what is your take on concurrent periodization? Is it any good on hypertrophy long-term as Alpha Destiny recommends? So it can definitely work. There's a lot more moving parts. I typically prefer a more phasic approach personally, but yeah, you can mix everything in together. It just sort of becomes a little bit more difficult to actually see what is working in some cases. Number 33, at what point does a beginner become an intermediate? What milestones or markers can we use to measure this? So this is going to be tough in 15 seconds. But again, it's more about how you can progress than absolute numbers. If you go into the gym on your first day and you hit a certain number and someone else takes a few years to get to that point, you are not both beginners. So it's not just the absolute load, it's how you can progress, because that is what matters in terms of programming decisions. Question number 34, what is the maximum bench press sets per week you ever did for a prolonged period of time? I'm not entirely sure, but more than 20, definitely. But I've done stuff like 20 singles at 90% or 92.5% or something like that. I have a very high work capacity, and I'm not that strong, and I'm very durable. So I can do huge amounts of volume, even like 30 sets per week, and recover well. So, you have to see what's going to work for you. All right, question 35. I always get cramps in my calves when I want to train them. I have tried having fruits and potassium, magnesium, salt electrolytes. Whenever I try to squeeze and contract the muscle, it cramps and doesn't allow me to train. What's going on? Any idea? You might just be dehydrated. Like, you can take all the electrolytes you want, but if you're dehydrated, you might still have issues. It could also be training technique. It could also just be your perception. Sometimes when you contract a muscle, it feels like a cramp, but it's actually just a contraction. Or it could be your programming. It's a lot of stuff. It's sort of hard to say. Number 36, have you ever dealt with a client that snapped their shit up? When is the soonest to start training again? Is a little pain okay? Also, congrats and hello from Detroit. Hey. Nothing dramatic or drastic. I'm sort of a stickler when it comes to technique, much more so for other people than myself, just because I'm much more risk averse with a client compared to myself. There have been very minor issues. I would say you don't want to take time completely off. You want to stay active and you want to keep getting blood into the affected area to help with recovery. Alan Thrall had a really good video about this, where you want to stay active and you don't want to just say, hey, I'm broken, and then stop completely. Number 37, how tall are you, and are you okay with your height? I am 6 feet or 1.83 meters tall, and yeah, completely fine with it. Question number 38, how to lean bulk effectively for a novice who doesn't track calories? Well, you can't track calories, but you still want a fairly modest caloric surplus, so I would say go based on body weight. If you're not tracking the input, track the output, how much you're getting per month or per week. I would say around 1 to 2 pounds per month is going to be a good spot. Question 39, I trained to failure and try grinding out more reps. If you can keep grinding out more reps past failure, it wasn't failure. Anyway, but my body likes to stay at the same reps for most lifts. So you're not progressing, okay? Could this issue just be calories, since I don't eat much, therefore my body won't gain weight and increase the pounds I lift? Yeah, so if you're chronically under-eating, it doesn't matter if you're training to failure or not failure or anything in your programming. If your calories are super low and you're just not eating enough, you will not grow and you will not get stronger. It matters and it's very important. Question number 40, your thoughts on beta-alanine. It doesn't really help your strength, and it helps more of like middle distance type of endurance. So like 1 minute, 2 minutes. It helps to buffer lactic acid, and it doesn't really show much in terms of body composition or muscle growth results. So I would say, unless you like that butthole tingling, not worth it. Question number 41. Thoughts on barbell back squat versus safety bar squat, shoulder health, muscle activation, etc. I've actually never done one because I've never had access to one. But yeah, it's going to be easier on the shoulders if you can't get in like that pinned back position. In terms of muscle activation, I wouldn't be the best source for that at all. Question number 42. What is your opinion on supersetting exercises with no common muscles like dips and pull-ups? I would say dips and pull-ups actually have more in common than you might think. But yeah, generally speaking, this is completely fine. Also keep in mind, for lower body, this doesn't work very well because cardiovascular output becomes a limiting factor. Plus, usually they have either the glutes or the lower back in common. Like if you superset squats with deadlifts or something like that, not a good idea. But for upper body, this can work. Question 43. I heard a pop during my 1 rep max deadlift, even after a sufficient warm-up. Is it serious? Should I give up on the deadlift? Well, it's sort of hard for me to say. If there's no pain, it's probably okay. Everyone has a certain area, like my right elbow just pops and cracks randomly, but it's always done that, so it's not an issue. So I would say it's probably not serious. You probably shouldn't give up the deadlift, but, keep in mind that, just be careful. Question 44, what do you think about straight arm biceps exercises like planche, back lever, etc.? Will they bulletproof my biceps tendon, and how do they compare to curling movements in terms of stimulus? So I would say they're worse in terms of stimulus, just generally speaking. Bulletproofing can work, but you have to progress very gradually. The tendons do take time to adapt, and so something could either snap you up or bulletproof you. It depends on the dose, on the loading, and the progression. Question 45, is it possible to gain and grow ab muscles assuming you have 10% body fat? Yeah, you can definitely get thicker, more developed, and more defined abdominal muscles. Both the rectus abdominis, the obliques, pretty much any muscle in that area can get bigger and more defined. If you look at Steve Hall, in 4 years, he made very, very impressive abdominal changes. So yes, it is possible, and it can make a significant visual difference if you are lean. Question 46, have you ever pushed yourself so hard you puked? If so, what exercise did you do it on? Yes, but I have a pretty strong stomach in general. I can actually drink milk during a workout and do high rep squats and be fine. The only time it's ever happened was sprints on the track. Tabata fucking destroyed me. But lifting, not really. Question 47, what is your opinion on starting strength? Will you try one of Mark's training programs? I think it can work well as long as you keep in mind starting strength. It's strength training for beginners. So I've never ran his programs, and I probably never will, just because that isn't really my goals, and I'm sort of a little bit past that at this point. Question 48. Tell us the best 4-day split each body part 2 times per week regime for a beginner that you have ever come across since you started lifting. Upper, lower, upper, lower. Pretty simple, tried and true, nothing fancy, but don't overestimate how much a split matters. It's not that important. Question 49, if using the pill, which to regulate hormones in females, why don't they get accused of not being natural? I don't know. I mean, a lot of stuff we do nowadays is not natural. Like you take any medicine, are you suddenly not natural? You take protein powder, are you suddenly not natural? So, I don't know. It's all just a matter of perspective and personal opinion. Question number 50, best diet advice for lean gaining over a long period of time. When you have to be in a small caloric surplus, how do you consistently gain without hitting a plateau? Keep in mind, you're going to have to increase your calories at least a little bit over the course of a bulk. If you start on 3,000 calories, after a few months, that is not going to be a surplus anymore. It's going to be your maintenance. It might even be a deficit in some cases. So you're going to have to gradually increase your calories over time in most cases. And some people, they actually upregulate quite a bit, so they're going to have to increase their calories quite a bit as well. Question number 51, I'm bulking right now for the first time in the gym with a pump. I can see abs when I flex them. However, without a pump and without flexing, I can clearly see a belly. Which should I use to determine my body fat percentage? You have to use both, okay? Because they're both states of existence, and you just have to keep them both in mind. If you had to choose one, I would say without a pump, without flexing is going to be more accurate. Most people are fatter than they actually think. Question number 52, how important of a role do you think cortisol plays in the natural lifter's journey? Quite a bit, and I would say actually more than testosterone, more than growth hormone. Both of those two get way more attention, even if they're not as important. So cortisol, yes, it does matter, and I'll have a full video on that. Number 53, how to deal with pain in the gym. So it depends what is causing it, but generally speaking, you want to avoid it, but work around it. So just because you get pain in your knee once from doing squats, it doesn't mean you completely give up on squats. Maybe you make a small adjustment in terms of your technique, in terms of loading, in terms of programming, and realize that pain is not always tissue damage, and tissue damage is not always pain. They are different things. They overlap, but they're different. Question 54 is sort of related. Is it normal for my knees to feel better after a leg day in comparison to before? That actually happens quite a bit, to where something might not feel quite right, and then you get in a workout and it feels better afterwards. And this is mostly because, again, pain is not just damage. Okay, so you might have a workout and get a lot of blood in the area, and it might feel better than before the workout. Question 55, as someone who's not into bodybuilding but just lifts for sports and general health, is it fine if I skip most of the isolation exercises and just stick to compound movements like rows, bench press, vertical pull, etc.? Yeah, completely fine. So isolation, it's just the icing on the cake. It's just targeting weak points or adding some volume to a particular area. But if you don't have goals to maximize your physique, you don't have to do those. In fact, you're probably better off just focusing on these exercises that are much more time efficient and doing that. Question 56, how much should a cookbook actually cost? 10, 20 bucks? The only way to support a very high price, far higher than everyone else is charging, is if you overmarket it and you have a very cultish, blind fan base who doesn't actually think. But if that's not the case, sell it at a normal price. 10, 20, maybe 30 bucks. Question 57, what is the best way to eat/prepare before a mud run, i.e. a 5K that's also a Ninja Warrior course? So try to find out what the obstacles are if you can. If not, you're going to have to just do a wide variety of stuff. Obviously, running is going to play a big part. Eat to get fairly lean, because obviously running, you're not going to be able to be really bulked up. But yeah, sort of hard for me to say without more specifics. Question number 58, can you please tell me everything that I need to do to start starting strength, linear progression, things like how much food, sleep, stress management, etc.? Dude, I have 15 seconds, okay? I can already tell based on this that you're overthinking things. Just start, okay? Don't try to prepare in advance for starting strength. Just start. It is literally built to just be foolproof. It's the most basic program out there. Just start. Question 59, who has the most impressive natural physique that you have ever seen? I'm a big fan of the old school guys, Steve Reeves, John Grimmick, Reg Park, etc., just because you can be pretty damn sure they're actually natural, in the 1940s, etc. Nowadays, who knows? It's sort of hard to say. Most naturals end up around the same spot. You don't see a natural 300-pound guy. Most of them sort of float around, the 200 to 170-pound-ish range. Question number 60, if one uses heavier weights for lower reps and is pushing the same amount of tonnage or slightly less than with higher reps for less weight, can they still make gains because of the higher intensity? Yes, I would not think about it in terms of I used a super light weight and it was a ton of tonnage. No, it's more about the effort per set. So I would just count the number of sets you do and give an honest effort each time rather than trying to calculate out how much weight you lifted. Question 61, is training to failure on every set a good way of training for hypertrophy? Obviously not counting movements like the squat and deadlift. It depends. You don't need to go to failure, but I think making that your default is probably a good idea as long as it's a safe movement. That way, if you slack off and you keep 1 or 2 or 3 reps in reserve, those are still useful. But if you're making 3 reps in reserve your norm, it's very easy to train too easy. 62, when to incorporate HIIT and LIST cardio in a full body routine. This is going to be individual. Okay, it's going to vary, and I have no idea based on your situation. Every client is different. Question 63, RPE 4 to 5 with lots of volume as Candido proposed, yes or no? For size, not really. For strength, absolutely. I did a full video on that. You can search that. It was maybe a month or 2 ago. So check out my full thoughts there. Question 64 is sort of a hypothetical one. Overhead press and flies for life, or bench press and lateral raises for life? I would say the latter. Just personal preference. The first one can work, but the second one would be my choice. Question 65. When are you going to try maxing out to test your actual 1-rep maxes? Your numbers are pretty weak. Might help you improve your standing in the YouTube Fitness clout game to get some heavier lifts in. So you don't actually know anything about my training, okay? Because I don't show all of it. I do go very heavy for me quite often. Plus, I don't think people actually care how much weight I lift. Of the 35 whatever thousand number of subscribers, how many actually care how much I personally lift? Maybe a dozen. Question 66, how to prevent binge eating? See a professional. Okay, social media, just some shredded guy online is probably not the best source for this kind of thing, and certainly not a 15-second snippet of a video. See a professional. Question 67, your first YouTube subscriber apart from friends and family. I don't know. It doesn't actually say who subscribes. It just, the number goes up, but I don't know who it is unless they have subscriptions public. So I don't know. Someone from Quora, probably. Question number 68, best fitness book that you didn't write. I would say Alexander Bromley's Base Strength and the Peak Strength, really, really good resource there. I actually get most of my information just online rather than books. Partly from living in China, there's not many English books, physical books, to actually find. And I don't really like reading ebooks on my phone. Next one, best way to keep your abductors trained. That's the outside, not the inside. If your gym doesn't have the abduction-adduction machine. So I would say squats do train them. Split squats, lunges, sumo deadlifts. You could also do something like a cable where you're moving your leg to the side. You probably see chicks use that. But it's okay for guys too. You can also do those side planks with leg raises. Those will work too. Question number 70, is high volume calisthenics for building muscle a viable option? Yes, but I would find a way to load a little bit more heavily, especially as you get a lot stronger. During quarantine, I didn't have an ability to load, and so I was doing something like 10 sets of 20 on dips, 6 sets of 30, just stupid amounts of volume, and the first few reps were basically just kind of boring. Question 71, how much cardio when bulking to not affect muscle gains? This is going to be pretty individual. I find that I can't do that much, possibly because I'm an ex-runner. And so if I start running, especially, my body is like, hey, well, we can't do both. So it sort of impacts things quite a bit. And I would say it depends on the type of cardio as well. Things that cause muscular damage and impact and inflammation just impact things more. Next question, thoughts on being a jack of all trades of fitness? Well, as a coach, you sort of need to be, especially an online coach. If you're a weightlifting coach and you brand and market yourself as that, you don't have to know a lot about nutrition. But if you're just a jack of all trades coach, you have to be a jack of all trades. And so, yeah, I'm completely fine with that, and I've never claimed to be an expert in any particular area. Number 73, snatch grip high pulls for upper back, and where to put them as extra, or can you use them as an alternative to rows? So, well, this is a huge programming discussion. You can add them in, most likely, but you might have to subtract something else. It depends on how much stress and if you can actually recover. So, sort of a complicated one. Number 74, if you personally did not know how to program, do you think the gains would have been near the same or worse? Definitely worse. And it does make a tremendous difference, especially as things slow down. In the beginning, you don't have to know programming because basically everything works. But as you get more advanced, you have to get more advanced in your way of thinking as well. Otherwise, you just won't make any progress at all. Question 75, can a teenager with newbie gains working out gain more muscle than an adult with newbie gains because of puberty? I would say yes. Just because you have two separate phenomenon going on, and one is the newbie gains, one is the puberty, and they do complement each other fairly well from what I have seen. Next one, have you ever considered giving rings space in your training, whether it would be weighted movements or static movements or whatever you want? If yes, no, why? Yeah, maybe eventually, but I'm the kind of person who has to focus on one thing at a time, or just a few movements at a time. And so the more I add in, the worse results I get. Variety is important, but excessive variety is not good, at least for me. Number 77, tips for big calves. Calf raises. Okay, treat them like any other muscle group. Be consistent, progressively overload, a mix of lower reps, moderate reps, high reps, a few different exercises, and mostly just being consistent. Next one, are you still writing a nutrition book? When will it come out? The next book is going to be weak point corrections, but it is pretty slow going. Just YouTube takes up 40, 50 hours a week. Coaching is another big chunk of time, 20, 30 hours a week, and then writing on other platforms as well. And so finding the extra time to write a whole book is a big undertaking. Most people who don't do YouTube severely underestimate how much time and energy and effort it actually takes, especially if doing it solo. Number 79, when doing an exercise like pull-ups or pull-downs, I find that after doing the first set or two really hard and reaching my rep goal, let's say 10 reps, I suddenly can only do 4 or 5 with the same weight. At this point, should I drop the weight a little bit and get back to doing higher reps to stay consistent, or continue with the same weight? So this is very common on pulling movements, especially if you go to failure, like all-out grinding failure. It will impact your reps on subsequent sets dramatically. I would say there's nothing wrong with reducing the weight, especially as I assume your goal is hypertrophy, and that is going to matter more, getting in that volume, compared to just keeping the same weight. Number 80, experience with rack pulls for yoke gains or experience with arm wrestling for forearm gains. So the former, I think rack pulls can work really, really well and are actually underrated. Arm wrestling for forearm gains doesn't make a lot of sense in my opinion. I would say it's just too risky in terms of risk versus reward, and that juice is not worth the squeeze. All right, next question. If you could only pick one push, one pull, one leg exercise for the rest of your life, what would they be? I would say dumbbell bench press, maybe incline, pull-ups with a neutral grip, and then trap bar deadlifts from the low handles. Question 81. Can only pick one body part that is maximally built to your genetic potential. What is it? Probably shoulders. Next question. Squat, stiff deadlift. I assume you mean legs and nothing else. Close grip bench press. Does this cover... Oh, an overhead press. Does this cover everything? No, but it's a good start. I don't think this much of a minimalistic approach is really good, although you can definitely develop an impressive physique with only these movements. Question 84. I'm currently on a push-pull leg split. I was wondering how to incorporate an OHP along with my bench press. Should I do it before or after the bench press, or maybe even do an OHP on leg days? So overhead press does not work your legs at all, and so I don't think it would go on a leg day, just based on logic and science and facts. I would say after the bench press is best, but if you put it before, that can also work. All right, number 85, what exercises should sprinters do in the gym that would help sprint performance? So I would say a mixture of squats to various depths, depending on knee health, maybe deadlifts, but not for everyone, Romanian deadlifts if it doesn't get you too sore, Olympic variations of explosive lifting, jump squats, core work, but again, it's going to be individual, and it's not like these are the exercises for sprinting. It is individual. Next question, number 86. What muscle, gains or maintenance, can be expected from more explosive or athletic purpose weightlifting training? The only areas I would say this would be very, very impactful might be the forearms, if you're not using straps, and then the upper traps. And then maybe the back and the legs, but I would say not as much as just traditional bodybuilder type of stuff. Next question, number 87. Does a 155 kilo PR on paused bench press at 90 kilos body weight, is that considered above average genetics? Been training 2 years, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I would say that's above average. It's not elite by any means, but it's certainly well above average. Question number 88. What is your advice for someone that can't balance training with a job that randomly goes from very labor intensive on some days to pretty chill on others? I would say give yourself a set range for all of your exercises and then just modify things in that way. So maybe 1 to 3, could be 2 to 4. It sort of depends on how you set stuff up, but you need to be able to modify that based on how the day goes. Question number 89. Why do powerlifters look much smaller than bodybuilders, even when the research states that muscle growth is the same whether training low reps or high reps? Genetics is a big factor, proximity to failure, drug choices, body fat percentage, a lot of powerlifters are fucking huge. They're just a little bit fatter, so you can't see this muscular definition. All right, question number 90. If you could only do one exercise for the rest of your life, which one? Walking. No. Fucking. Question number 91. What training alterations should a tall, lanky lifter make? You might have to reduce squat volume and maybe just overall volume as well, because the range of motion is going to be greater. You're just doing more work per rep. But it needs to be on a case-by-case basis. You're more likely to have mobility deficits. But again, this is a case-by-case kind of thing, and you're going to have to individually assess. 92, who is your favorite YouTuber? I'll actually make my subscriptions public so you can check everyone I am actually subscribed to. And I even did a full video on my top 10, which I will link in a card up above. Question number 93, thoughts on The Pioneer's Unconventional Approach to Fitness. I actually bought his book December of last year, and I have yet to review it. I've watched a bunch of his stuff, and I will definitely do a full review at some point. All right, number 94, is it smart to start an arm day with 2 compounds, like chin-ups and dips, and then move to more isolated exercises later, like spider curls and extensions, or just try to get stronger on isolations? So I would say it depends on your split and how you set everything up. You know, if you have a chest day the day before or something, maybe dips are not the greatest choice, right? So it depends mostly on your split, but then also personal preference. I tend to stick with isolations only if I do an arm day, which isn't that often. Number 95, will you ever do a natural bodybuilding show? Probably not. I just don't really see the appeal. It seems like almost all downside and no upside. So no. Like 99.9% no. Number 96, favorite split when bulking / muscle building is a priority. I think if you're bulking or cutting or maintaining, the split shouldn't change very much. And I don't put any split on a pedestal. It's just a way to divide up the volume. Nothing more, nothing less. And I think talking about splits too much is giving people the wrong idea because it's not that important. Number 97, can't bring out my ankle mobility. Any downsides in using squat shoes forever? The only downside might be maybe you don't have squat shoes when you're traveling or something, like you're going on vacation and you want to lift, but you don't have your squat shoes. But apart from that, not really. I mean, Olympic weightlifters use squat shoes their entire careers. Next question, what are the best beginner lifts? Every beginner is going to be different. I have some people start on just back squats and deadlifts and bench presses and pull-ups and rows and basic movements. Other people, they can't do a bodyweight squat. And so we have to actually start with no barbell, no dumbbells, nothing, with a partial range of motion using just body weight. So it really is individual. Number 99, what is the best barbell lift for stubborn lats? I'll just give you a list and you can try them out and find what is the best for you. T-bar row, Yates row, barbell bent over row, Meadows rows. That's about all. Question number 100, do you need to train the big 3 at least 2 times per week for someone having power building goals, or is 1 time enough? Depends on a lot of factors. Some people do find a 1 time per week, but I would say for most people, at least twice per week is better, especially for the squat and the bench press. Deadlift, it's a little bit less technical, so I would say once per week might be sufficient. Next one, 101, managing reps and sets as the weight on the bar increases versus using the same weight until you hit a desired number of reps and sets. What is better in your opinion? I would say the first one is generally better, but the second one can work better for, let's say you're doing lateral raises with 10 kilos and then the next dumbbell is up or like 12 kilos. You might need to do that kind of step loading thing for it to work properly. So it really does depend on the lift and your current situation. 102, have you ever been to the Netherlands? I have not, but I have a few friends there, and it looks very nice. 103, thoughts on high weight, low rep ranges for ab exercises. Are they better than low weight, high rep ranges for building a stronger core? So I would say it depends on the ab exercise. Don't max out on a Pallof press. Don't max out on weighted crunches. That being said, a lot of people do have too high of a rep range, and they're going for the burn. So I would say a moderate rep range is going to be completely fine. And on some movements, you might be able to go heavier, but not all of them. 104, I have a really bad and old chronic joint injury on my ankles, and doing any kind of squat makes the pain like a hell for me. I've been avoiding doing squats for a whole year now and trying the leg press instead. Is it good enough? Or if it's not, what should I do to compensate for a lack of squat on my program? You don't have to squat, okay? I've never said anyone has to squat. Plenty of my clients don't squat. It is individual. And if you're getting pain, you don't have to squat, okay? Leg press is fine. You can also maybe add in some unilateral type of stuff, but no, you don't have to squat. 105, favorite body weight exercise. Probably pull-ups. You don't have to weight them very, very heavily for them to be effective, unlike, a push-up or something. And they're a little bit easier on the body than dips, so I would say, yeah, pull-ups. Question 106, would you accept a sponsorship from Greg D? A lot of these answers have nuance, it depends on the situation, but this one, pretty clear answer, no. Next question, I've lost body weight, but gained body fat percentage at the same time. Despite exercise every day and track calories and eat protein and vegetable, down 20 pounds, but body fat went from 19 to 25%. How did this happen? So I've seen you in the comments a bunch of times before, and it sounds like you're doing everything right, but you're getting absolutely horrible results, and I have no idea. And it's not something I can actually help in a Q&A. I wish I could, but there's something going on here that is way beyond just what I can answer in 15 seconds. All right, the next, someone asked 5 questions rapid fire, but I can answer them pretty quickly. Do pre-workout meals matter, or can you just eat whatever? They matter. Cheat meal after or before the workout? After. Do we need to obsess over making sure to drink a gallon of water a day? No. Kegel exercises or squats? If you need to do both, you can do both, okay? It's not like you can only do one or the other. How long do you normally spend in the gym? Usually about an hour and a half, but that includes filming, which does add a little bit of time. Next one, 109. Does hard cardio kill only leg gains or the whole body, assuming you're not in a huge caloric deficit? So probably more lower body than upper body, but it can still definitely impact upper body. This is because it's not just local. When you do cardio, it is also systemic in terms of fatigue, but also in terms of CNS disruption, which is more with cardio than lifting actually, as well as the hormonal impacts of having higher cortisol levels. Next one, 110. I'm having a problem that popped up recently. My workout started to become more fatiguing, especially if the set is beyond 10 reps. I became afraid of leg day. I'm not going to say that I don't know why. Indeed, I know. It is because I'm bound to desk job for 10 hours or more in the last couple of weeks, usually 8 hours. With that said, what is the best approach for this without quitting my job? I am at least 10 hours per day at a desk as well. So I don't think that's really an issue, and it shouldn't be causing fatigue at all. Okay, make sure you warm up well. This doesn't sound like it's the issue, it's the working, it's something else. This shouldn't be causing fatigue. And you can also reduce the reps. You don't have to do 10 plus reps. You can keep it to 5 to 10. Next one, is there any difference between the results of different protein brands comparing the same type of protein? Like, for example, I can get 2 brands of protein, the same one for 1,500 Indian money, the other for 3,000 per kilo of Indian money, i.e. twice the amount. Yes, I know. By the way, love from India. It's hard for me to say without actually seeing the ingredients. The cheap one could be a bunch of filler and absolutely shit, or it could be actually better than the more expensive variation. So, I don't know. Look at what is actually in there and do your research. I can't do that because I can't see the product. And even if I could, you should still do your research. Next one, due to my schedule, I often find myself in this situation. Should I work out in the morning, 4 a.m. fasted, and don't eat until lunch around 1 to 2 p.m.? Or should I just skip weightlifting that day altogether since I'm not getting in a meal right away after my workout? No, I cannot work out PM, only time is in the morning. Am I hurting my overall gains? How long does it take to make a protein shake or to whip up 3 or 4 eggs? Not very long. I don't see why you have to wait 8 or 9 hours or 10 hours after the workout. Protein is not hard to get in. At least get in protein after the workout. Not hard to do at all. Next one, how much new information has been discovered for strength and conditioning in the last decade, if any? It's hard to put a number on this. A lot of it is confirming what people already do, or it's mechanistic, or it's not practical, or it's cherry-picked, or it's just adding to the bulk of the information that we already have. And so, I would say recent research isn't always useful. Often, it's not something that actually changes the process at all. 114 tips on how to be a good personal trainer in your opinion. I would say keep educating yourself on best practices, be open-minded, not dogmatic, flexible, listen to your clients. Remember, you're serving them. They're not out to make your goals happen, right? And then basically just don't be a piece of shit, and you're already better than a lot of them. Next one, full body 3 days per week or high frequency 4 or 5 times per week for a natural lifter. Yes. Again, there's so many factors here. It does depend. Start with 3 days full body and then, add in a 4th and a 5th day if you can recover well. Next question, I'm a home gym guy with a crappy rack and I can't safely do heavy barbell squats. Is there a cocktail of dumbbell exercises that I can do to replace it? Would something like a goblet squat, deadlifts, and face pulls work? For strength, not really, okay? There's nothing that really replicates a heavy barbell back squat. You could do front squats, which might be safer because you can just dump the bar more easily. But a goblet squat is never ever going to be heavy enough to actually replicate that stimulus. You can do higher reps, but that's different neurologically than lower heavy reps. And face pulls and deadlifts are not really similar enough. Next question, 117. I love your channel. Not only have good information, but it's also fun. Always a nice time. See your videos. Thank you. How I program speed work with strength. For example, my lower days, I do any kind of jump between my squat or deadlift. I'm looking for other options. I would say maybe put them at the beginning of the workout where you're more fresh. Although in between can work as long as you're not training to failure or near failure or to the point of fatigue. It sort of depends on your goals. If you want to get faster, jumping is probably not the best way, just because sprinting is more horizontal and jumping is more vertical. Next question, kind of a weird one. Best back squat variation other than front squat. Parentheses, hate those. High bar? Low bar? Middle bar? I don't know, I don't even understand this question. 119 is 405, I assume you mean pounds, for 10 on stiff-legged deadlifts with slow eccentrics at 200 pounds body weight considered solid. Yes. And if you're that strong, you know it's solid, so you don't really have to ask me. 120, does the rear delt get as much stimulation from pulling and rowing as the front delt gets from pressing and pushing, assuming equal intensity, volume, etc.? Or should the rear delt be isolated to ensure that there are no imbalances between front and back? I would say most people, they do need rear delt work. Most people do not need front delt work in terms of isolations. So, and that's just observationally speaking. There's no mechanics or why this area would be hit more. That's just from looking around. Question 121, sort of a long one. Rest time between sets is a popular, yet in my opinion, a bit overrated topic in resistance training and bodybuilding. It makes a difference, but what people don't discuss is how we should spend those rest times, not only how long we should rest. So yeah, how much of a difference does it make between just trying to optimize your rest time versus being on your phone? I would say it doesn't make that big of a difference. The body's going to recover whether you're meditating or on your phone or walking around a little bit. As long as you're not doing, jumping jacks and shit, I don't think you have to worry too much about what you're actually doing. 122, can I get away with just 2 big compound movements pushed hard enough per workout for, say, a push day? I usually prefer 3, but 2 can possibly work. Again, it depends on how many sets you're doing more than how many exercises, because that is how you actually determine the stress. Question 123, does your gym leave all the equipment outside even when it rains? Yep. Yeah, they do. And it rusts. And I actually told them about that, and they're just too lazy or too stupid to actually do anything about it. But hey, doesn't affect me. 124, workout for men's physique competition. Any suggestions from your side for a natural lifter? I think most men's physique competitors are not actually natural nowadays. They're fucking huge. They're well over 200 pounds and lean in a lot of cases. So yeah, if you're natural and you expect to be competitive, maybe reassess expectations. Exercise selection or anything different from usual routine. Yeah, quads and legs don't matter that much. Maybe calves because they show through the trunks, because the legs, whatever. And then focus on lats, delts, abs, and having a small waistline, which is mostly genetic. 125, favorite pre-workout and clothing brand. I'm actually using Sean Alamani's Real Science Athletic pre-workout. Really, really like it. Flavor's good. Energy is really good. I don't use it all the time, but like if I have a tough workout, I might dig in there and use that. Clothing brand, I'm the wrong guy to ask about any of that kind of stuff, clearly. Number 126 is sort of a three-parter, all about dumbbell shoulder presses. Number one, what is the full range of motion on a dumbbell shoulder press? I like to go down fairly deep. You're not going to be able to go down all the way because the dumbbell will hit you in the shoulder. But if you're only at here, that's not full range of motion. Should we do it in full range of motion like the barbell by holding the dumbbells more in front of us? I would say if you want to do an Arnold press, go all the way and just do an Arnold press rather than like some kind of weird half Arnold press. Should the scapula and traps move freely during the dumbbell shoulder press? Yes, but you don't have to focus on like protraction or retraction like you do in a bench press. Just keep everything stable and that's going to be good enough. 127, chocolate milk or strawberry milk. Right now strawberry, but long term I think chocolate is going to be better. It's not as sweet, and if I'm going for more of a volume-based approach, chocolate is going to be better. Number 128, when bulking, how do you track progress in pull-ups? Due to the weight increase, the reps increases seem to stall, so how do you track the progress? Just track the weight added and realize that it might not be as fast as other movements like pull downs or rows or something else because you are moving more weight. But I don't think it's necessary to really track the total weight. It's a little bit too much minutia. Next one, opinion on training full body every day, one set to total failure. I think this works if you're not very strong, but once you get stronger, it's just not going to work very well. If you do a set of 15 reps in the squat to failure when you're super fucking strong, that's not something you're going to be able to come back the next day and be like, all right, now we're doing leg press. Not so much. 130, am I missing out on gains when I skip deadlifts? I don't like the movement. It doesn't feel good on my back rounds. For the lower back, I do back extensions. Yeah, that's fine. But keep in mind, just because you're doing it incorrectly doesn't mean it's a bad movement. And, maybe try them again in the future when you can brace the core more effectively. 131, I have really long legs and recently have been getting more into deadlifting, and I'm split between sumo and trap bar deadlifts just to make it easier to get the weight off the floor without straining my lower back and making it a squat. Both feel okay, but I just wanted your opinion. Try both, okay? Do a cycle of one and a cycle of the other, or maybe alternate, but there's no reason to leave one out of your training completely. You don't have to just pick one. 132, you rate the back extension fairly well in your book. Thoughts on the reverse hyper? I've actually never personally done it or seen one in person. I do have a client who actually, his home gym has a reverse hyper, and it looks good. It's different from a back extension. It's going to work similar muscles, but it looks to be quite different. In one, your upper body is moving with the lower body stable, and then in the other, it's the opposite. So I would say, if you have access, definitely give it a shot. 133, do you remember how much you lifted on the squat, bench press, and deadlift when you started lifting? I don't remember exactly. I actually lost my training logs. I think squat was around 50 kilos, bench 45 to 50, and then deadlift, I think 80. So my deadlift was always quite a bit better than my squat. All right, next one, is vertical pressing for shoulders on a push day disposable? Why should we not progress with dumbbell barbell vertical press same way we do for chest? I'll do a full video on if it's disposable. I think it is more disposable than a lot of movement patterns. Why should we not progress? You should still progress. Thoughts on mini cuts and mini bulks 3 days each? I don't like this. I think you want consistency. I think you want long-term progress. 3 days is not a cut or a bulk. That's just eating more or less a certain part of the week. So I would say that doesn't make much sense. Number 135, do row variations target lats differently, i.e. horizontal for thickness or vertical for wideness? Well, if it's vertical, it's not really a row anymore. It's a pull. It's a vertical pull. And yes, they do target the lats differently. The strength curve is completely different. Rows target the end part of the range of motion and have just less range of motion in general. What does Natural Hypertrophy's clown shirt read? I think it's actually Japanese and not Chinese. And sometimes I can read some stuff in Japanese. Like when I went to Tokyo, I could read street signs fairly well just from knowing Mandarin. But just 4 characters, I'm not entirely sure what they say. I can identify a few of the characters, but I can't understand the entire meaning. All right, next one, 137, your top 3 favorite snacks. This is going to be a little bit controversial. I don't snack. Okay, I don't like keep food nearby to nibble on all day. When I eat food, I eat food. When I don't eat food, I don't eat food. So for me, it's just, I don't even really have snacks. 138, can you distinguish between exercises for the mid traps versus lower traps, or do they mostly both get hit optimally regardless of the exercise? So it's better to think of it as a range, from upper to upper mid to mid lower to lower. And depending on the angle, different exercises are going to target that a little bit differently. And a lot of exercises target both. And some exercises are primarily mid, some are primarily low. It just depends on the exact exercise as well as how you position your body. Question 139, this guy has 3 questions. If your calves cramp up, it's an insane contraction. Does that cause hypertrophy? Maybe a little bit, but probably not the optimal way of going about things. The second one, does getting a tighter stomach, for example, using vacuums, inhibit belly breathing? I would say no. They are sort of different skills, and you can have both at the same time. I love deadlifting, but my traps are getting bigger than I'd like. Should I train my shoulders more to compensate? Sure. Question 140, thoughts on data-driven strength / low fatigue approach to size and strength increase. This works much better for strength compared to size, I would say. Again, I did a full video on that, and I think it can work. There's a very strong argument for keeping fatigue very low and keeping many, many reps in the tank and just doing more sets to make up for the volume. The same guy has more questions. What do you think about the role of placebo on strength development? It might have a small effect, but I don't think it's going to be as big. Belief is important, but it's not going to be a complete game changer. Next one, does a novice lifter put as much effort into a 1-rep max as an elite powerlifter? Or is the amount of effort you were able to put into a lift a skill on its own? And if so, is there a limit to the skill? So yes, an elite powerlifter is going to be putting more into a 1-rep max. For sure, without a doubt. Part of this is genetic, part of it is strength. It's just more taxing when you're lifting a whole bunch more weight on the central nervous system, most likely. Usually it's not a big issue, but if you're super fucking strong, it might be. On the skeletal system, just in terms of the muscle mass used, it's different. Next, what is your favorite unilateral leg exercise? Probably Bulgarian split squats. Lunges are good too. Next one, for strength, do you think there's value in doing high rep sets to failure, more than 20 occasionally? Not really. Honestly, no. Not to failure and probably not that high. Maybe on accessory movements like, to target a certain area, but for the main lifts, not really. Next question, 142, is 1.4 grams per kilo of protein enough to see optimal results? Pretty close. Generally I recommend 1.6, but if you're slightly below that, it's not like you see wildly less results or like you start losing muscle. So I would say it's pretty close to what is likely optimal, but you might see slightly better results by getting a little bit more. Next question, 143. How young do you think is too young to start weightlifting / bodybuilding? As long as they have a genuine interest in it, and it's not just like parents, fucking deadlift, kid, get after it, son. Then I would say, 10, 8, 12, maybe even younger. Completely fine. Next question, have you eaten chicken, broccoli, and rice before? I have had those foods, but I have not had those foods together in syringe form. Let's put it that way. Next question, your opinion on BPC 125. I don't know what that is, so I don't really have an opinion on it. Next question, should I bulk and cut as a teen? Bulking is probably fine. Your P ratio is going to be off the charts due to puberty, but I would say cutting, probably not the best idea, especially like a harsh cut. The only reason I would cut as a teen is if you are a very high body fat percentage. But if you're just normal and you're like, yo, I want to get fucking abs, bro, I would say that's not a good idea. Next question, 147. What's your opinion on calorie blockers like chitosan for fat or white kidney bean extract for carbs? Lane Norton did a video recently on this. I just saw him like sprinkling or saw him assessing someone sprinkling this stuff on a pizza, and it's like, oh, you can eat whatever you want if you just sprinkle this shit on your pizza. There is good information about it from what I could tell, but people are looking for any way to continue to stuff their faces and still get results and still lose fat. So I would say just nothing really replaces discipline, okay? You can try to add these in. They might be effective. They might help, but I don't think they're going to be magic. Next one, what do you think of overhead squats, especially with respect to hypertrophy? They have a place or waste of time? Waste of time. You're not loading the legs nearly as effectively. It's more of like a test of mobility than anything else. I mean, it's CrossFit, let's put it that way. It's not actually hypertrophy training. And for the shoulders, again, not going to be even close to efficient. Next question, if you're unable to train for about 4 months, would you recommend being in a caloric surplus to avoid losing muscle, or would you be in a slight deficit to avoid putting on fat? I would say just eat around maintenance. Why are you unable to train? You should still be able to do something unless it's like a surgery or some other weird situation. Without knowing your exact circumstances, it's sort of hard to give advice, but I would say aiming for around maintenance is going to be the good general answer. Number 150, any tips for those like me who have a small appetite and have difficulty eating at a caloric surplus? Liquid calories are good, and just calorically dense foods in general, as well as higher meal frequency, and just being disciplined about getting in the calories. It's a problem that not that many people have, but it requires just as much discipline as restricting your calories. 151, what is your opinion on doing only compound exercises and avoiding isolation ones? Will that make me look big? It can. It depends on how you set things up and the myriad of other factors involved. It can absolutely work for sure. Next question, can you speak a few Chinese sentences? 不会。他们外国人他们不会说中文，他们都很笨。他在中国10年多，什么都不会说。All right, next question. Since you don't have any insecurities that you could think of based on the last Q&A, then what do you think has made you this type of person that isn't insecure about themselves? I feel that there are many insecure people in this world, and it would be nice to understand how someone who isn't generally insecure about themselves became that way. You can go to therapy, or you can just say, sometimes life be like that. And I think just not taking things that seriously is probably the best way to go about things. I mean, why so serious? Next question, 154. Will you ever go on HRT for its health and longevity benefits later in your life? So it only has benefits if you're low testosterone. And I don't think you should expect to have low testosterone later in life. A lot of younger men, they think by the time they're 30 or 35 or 40 that their testosterone is going to plummet. That only happens if you don't take care of yourself or if you have really bad genetics in that regard. I definitely don't have bad genetics in that regard. Even when I'm like very, very lean, I don't really get libido issues or energy issues. And so I don't foresee that ever being an issue. And so I don't see any reasons to take testosterone. 155, why do you consume casein in the morning as opposed to something like whey, which would absorb faster and spike muscle protein synthesis levels first thing in the morning after your body has been depleted of amino acids all night? Well, it hasn't, because I take casein before bed, and so I'm getting, 4 or 5 hours, maybe even 6 of amino acids trickling in that time. So it's more like a few hours at most. Plus, it's not like the body just starts to lose muscle immediately if you don't have protein available. And so I see this being a complete non-factor. 156, having lived in both the Western world and China, what is your evaluation of the social credit system? Is it as big a deal as the media makes it seem, or is it largely fear-mongering? So I've actually asked a few Chinese friends about this, and they didn't know it existed. I'm like, yeah, he's like, there's this system that evaluates, your social credit score, and they're just like, what? They had no idea that it even existed. So that alone should tell you that it's not that big a deal. 157, how does one grow with calisthenics? How many sets should you do for each body part in calisthenics? What's the best rep range for calisthenics? Okay, so You grow just by stressing the muscle, by putting, tension on the muscle. Same with anything else. How many sets? Individual. What's the best rep range? 5 to 10 is fine. 10 to 15 is fine as well. And you can go slightly higher as well as needed. A lot of individual variation there. 158. Which exercise are you progressively overloading, mostly by increasing reps before weight? This is mostly things where it's not possible to increase by small amounts. So again, like a lateral raise or a curl, where it's not very easy to micro-load. 159. Best exercise for upper traps other than shrugs. So I like high pulls. I like anything with a snatch grip. Cheat lateral raises. A lot of options there. I don't even think shrugs are all that great. Even if they follow the fibers, if you're really doing very, very controlled shrugs, the weight you're going to be using is a very, very limited. Number 160, what is the fastest way to gain mainly strength and less hypertrophy? I would say fairly high frequency, avoiding failure, and pretty heavy weights with plenty of recovery time. Also, don't eat very much food, and you won't have to worry about hypertrophy very much. 161, which is better, 10 reps with excellent form or 12 reps with sloppy form? I would say probably 10 reps with excellent form. With sloppy form, it's probably not as good of a performance. Plus, generally speaking, excellent form is going to be just a better overall recommendation. Next question, did you try the ATG split squat? What's your thoughts? Keep up the honest work. I think they're good, especially if you have knee issues or if you want to open up the hips. I think they're excellent. Knees over toes guy. I mean, he's one of the most genuine people in the industry. Absolutely knows his stuff, and definitely check him out. 163, what is considered strong? If someone is 150 pounds and benching their body weight, is that equivalent in strength to someone 200 pounds benching 200, assuming similar body fat percentages and leverages? In general, I'm not a huge fan of the body weight percentage multiplier kind of thing. I mean, if you can do a double body weight deadlift, but you're absolutely tiny, who gives a shit, right? Or even triple body weight. Like, oh, you're 50 kilos and you deadlift 150 kilos. Who cares? Next one, how often do you incorporate isometrics in your program, and how important are they for maximizing gains? They're not important. I don't incorporate them very often. I think they can work. I think they can help, but they're by no means necessary whatsoever, and you don't need them to maximize gains. Next question, skinny guy here, do you consider mass gainers to be safe? I hear a lot of people saying they're dangerous with steroids, chemicals, and other bad things. Blah, 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 blah. It depends on the brand. It depends what's in them. So you're going to have to do your own research. It's hard to make blanket statements on supplements because some are complete shit and some are actually genuinely helpful and well made. So, yeah, hard to say. 166, recently Mario made a video on why I stopped building muscle and mentioned 5 years training is base, and after that, small changes which you can't even notice. Do you agree with him? So I've actually made quite a bit of progress from year 5 to year 7 where I am now. But I do think that, years 2, 3, 4, I didn't really optimize things by any means. So I would say after 5 years of very, very good training, assuming you're natural, yeah, the progress is going to slow down a lot to the point where it's like actually kind of tough to see. I posted a photo of me 2 years ago compared to now, and some people were like, there's not that big a difference. Yeah, there's not that big a difference. And in fact, when I showed my wife, which was before, which was after, she said that I was bigger in the before, which is tough to hear. 167, sir. You don't have to call me sir. I'm just a dude. You can call me dude, all right? My traps are so weak. I have tried front and back shrugs twice a week, but they aren't growing. Guide me any way to work on that, please, if possible. Thank you, sir. Love and respect from India. Olympic weightlifting variations, high pulls, any Olympic style, like where you're explosively shrugging up is going to be good. You can even just do like a power shrug. Deadlifts, rack pulls, cheat lateral raises, rows where you're somewhat upright, like Yates style, or those are all going to be really effective. But also keep in mind, traps are somewhat genetic, as with any muscle group. All right, that is all the questions, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.